Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to present this webinar to you entitled Bridging Education and Aspiration, Unveiling the Power of Non-Credit Learning. We're thrilled to have Dee Masiello, the Director of the Center for Continuing and Professional Education, and Dave Merry, the Vice Provost for Career Education, here with us today. And they will be taking us through the webinar. Please note that if you have any questions at all during this time, you can use the questions and answer pane over on the right-hand side of Zoom, and we'll be addressing those at the end of the webinar. But please feel free to type any in as we go along, as they come to you. Also, I'll be putting a couple of things in the chat as we're going through, giving you our email address, a couple of links to share, maybe some dates. So please take a look in there as well as Dave and Dee are going through. And I will turn it over to them.
Great. Thanks so much, Allison, and welcome today to this webinar. Really excited to have you all here with us. So again, my name is Dave Merry. So I'm the Associate Provost for Career Education and Professional Development here at Suffolk University, which means I'm often thinking about that interplay and that connection between the workforce and the world of education and vice versa, about how one is impacting the other, and thinking about the new trends in that space so that we can be current or even ahead of current in the ways that we are sort of changing our programming and advising our students. When I talk about the trends in the employment landscape, people are rarely surprised about what I'm talking about. It's common knowledge that a lot is changing. We all feel that sense that things are shifting day to day. And folks typically have a good sense of the types of changes that are happening, or at least the general direction that they're moving in. What's far less common is to see people actually changing their behavior based on those trends. So even when people are completely aware of the changes, most of them are still trying to navigate their careers like it's 2015. So it's that disconnect between what we know and what we do that we're often trying to overcome with folks that we're working with, either full-time students or our credential students, to say, here's how we can change your career path and the way you approach it. So to kick off, I just want to put some of those trends on the table, make them more explicit. Again, they won't be shocking, but I think sort of laying them out there, talking about their implications is a good foundation for the rest of what we could talk about today. So, first off, in a post-pandemic world, I think, I can say post-pandemic, even if we can't say post-COVID, but post-pandemic world, we know that a lot has changed in the workplace and a lot changed, as somebody who transitioned his career in 2020, I know it's an interesting time to sort of be thinking about upskilling and changing your role. And we know that remote work and sort of flexible work hours has changed a lot about what employers expect of employees, but also even more critically sometimes what employees expect from their workplace. And that includes that demand for remote work, flexible hours, work-life balance, that idea of thinking about the mental health and quality of life of workers. And employers are needing to update what they do. They need to grant those requests, whether begrudgingly or willingly, to stay in the marketplace. But it also means that they're looking for different skills from the people they're hiring. If they're offering remote work, if they're offering flexible hours, they're looking for people who can come in with skills around being a self-starter, self-motivated, to be able to set their own deadlines and time management and work in an unsupervised way. Not only for people who say that they can do that, but with an active track record of having done that in the past. And so they're looking for people who not just demand changes in the workplace, but can be successful with those changes happening. I'm sure no one's going to be surprised to hear AI and automation being another one of those drivers of change for today's workforce. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I think 5 and 10 years from now, we'll say, oh, 2023, we thought we knew what change was. But we're really just at the start about how that's impacting the world of work. All of our jobs and industries are going to be fundamentally changed in some way by the way that computer and automation technology is impacting that. There's a lot of discussion about how that's going to impact the number of jobs, the employment rate, this industry or that industry, which will ascend and which is done now. And day to day, you might hear contradicting information about that. And that's because it's a very unstable or very unpredictable, chaotic environment. But so, a lot of that information changes day to day. What we talk about less often is how an individual person can be successful through that. So what are the things that you can do, even in this, fundamentally uncertain time? How can you thrive regardless of what happens in your particular industry or field? And we know that there are certain skills that are going to help anybody be successful, regardless of what path it takes. We know that the foundation is going to be around technology impacting careers. So there's two domains of skills that we hear about quite often. Publishers like LinkedIn, McKinsey, World Economic Forum, they're all sort of coalescing around these same two domains. One is that sort of uniquely human skill set. So empathy, inspirational leadership, creating a sense of belonging, creativity. Those are things that can be augmented by AI, but they're led by humans. They're human-oriented, human-forward skills. And those are becoming more and more valuable as AI takes over some of those foundational tasks. Those purely human skills are more important than ever. And at the same time, thinking about your comfort and familiarity with technology. So you don't have to be a programmer or a hacker, but can you try a new technology and approach it from a sense of curiosity and not fear? Can you implement a new technology in creative ways into your work? Those are the types of skills that are going to help you be on top of these trends, take advantage of them no matter where they lead. So it's not being able to use Python, it's being able to quickly understand and adapt to a new technology, because that's going to change year after year. But that ability to be flexible and integrate technology into your work, that's what's going to last and help you navigate this change over time. And lastly, I could talk about changes all day, so I say lastly with, tongue in cheek, but for this presentation, thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, we know that over the past 3 years, this has been a central strategic pillar and central value that companies have been making great efforts to demonstrate their commitment to, both with their clientele and their customers, but also internally for their workforces, whether they've been successful or not. And so that means that when they're hiring people, they're looking for individuals who not just have sort of a passing acceptance or agreement with the sentiment of we need to be inclusive, but who have the skills and confidence to actively create inclusive workforces for their coworkers and for the people they manage. So have the skills, who have done the self-work to say, I've thought this topic through, and I have some thoughts about how I'm going to implement that in my own work. For our current full-time students here at Suffolk, that looks like engaging in one of our Equity at Work seminars, where we have all of the participants examine their own social identities, really think about the bias and privilege and all of the different aspects that they bring to their work experience. We look at various identities in the workplace and how they intersect. And then we have each participant leave with an action plan for how they can be a more inclusive and equitable leader in their career. So it's very individualized and a lot of introspection. That's just sort of a snippet of what we're able to do with something like our DEI certificate, led by our VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at Suffolk, Joya Smith. Graduates from that certificate program are really thinking about, how can I not just say that I'm supportive of DEI, but have the skills and context and language and confidence to make an impact in the workforce. And so when you graduate with a certificate like that, you have both the credential and the ability to create some real change. And so that's the type of upskilling that we're talking about throughout the presentation today, not just acknowledging that a change is happening, but taking an active step to be ready for that skill. And so speaking about those tips of non-credit skills, credentials, I want to pass it over to my colleague, Dee, who has done a lot of work in this area.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, everything that you said is really the fundamental foundations of my philosophy in education. And I have been in education either through administrative roles, program development roles, and I'm actually a professor myself. And so looking at this concept of education and learning, beyond just, I think, what a lot of us may have been raised to believe, that education, you go to primary school, you graduate high school, you might, the expectation is that you would then go on to get a bachelor's degree and possibly a master's degree. And that's sort of a traditional pathway that you would take. And there's still a lot of value in doing those things. But learning is so much more than just a traditional pathway and recognized credential. Learning is lifelong. That's how we learn. Learning is built on scaffolding. So the more we know, the more then we're able to understand new concepts in the context of what we know and build our knowledge over that. And that's why the idea of sort of short, skills-focused, competency-based education makes a lot of sense. It is something that allows us to pivot, to build those foundations, connect those synapses, so to speak, but doing so in a relatively short period of time, as opposed to saying, well, I want to learn this new skill and I'm going to go back and get my master's degree. I'm going to complete my undergraduate degree. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the difference of those two things. But when you think about non-credit skills, they really are these opportunities for you to almost get what we call bite-sized learning. You want to learn something new because it's of interest to you. You want to learn something new because you feel that you've been doing this, but you really want to get a better sense of how you can identify the skills and competencies that you have in that particular area in a way that you can speak to them and you can promote yourself and you can really leverage them to improve both yourself personally and professionally. And this is something that I think we find a lot, that people don't even realize what they know. We had a student in the program and I talked to him at length, and he would say that, through his career, and he had a very varied career, just loved learning. And he would be and he was one of our DEI students, and he finds himself in the workplace and he would be doing, using his intuition, so to speak, to approach situations in a certain way. But a lot of it was based on, again, instinct, knowledge, experience. And part of the certificate was really helping him realize and confirm and build the confidence around the fact that, yes, I know what I'm talking about. I know this. And now, because I have both the experience and kind of this very focused approach, this very focused learning experience, now I can be incredibly much more confident in what I know, and therefore have bigger impact within my organization or whatever it is I want to do. So when you think about that approach of non-credit skills, competency-based learning, what you're thinking about are ways that you are just, again, often building upon skills and a knowledge that you have a sense of already, but you just need to be able to apply it in a guided, structured way with the right facilitation and the right materials that kind of help you build that. And another thing about skills-based learning is that it provides you the opportunity to look at things that are really in high demand, right? One of the things that we think about is anyone who may have graduated with a marketing degree 5 or more years ago. There is a whole bevy of skills, digital skills, that were not part of your degree, or maybe were early in the introduction within those degrees, that are in demand now. Well, you don't want to go back and get another marketing degree, but what you really want to do is be able to understand digital marketing skills, digital marketing concepts that can complement what you already know, and do so in a way that allows you to apply them much sooner, and even during the acquisition of those skills in the programs. They're also really flexible. Dave mentioned technology comes in, and even from AI, we cannot underestimate that the growth of these skills is because technology. There's, the principle that I think technology at one point renews itself. It has about a shelf life of about 18 months. And I actually think that's a little long now. It's probably a lot less. And so not only, as Dave mentioned, do you need to become familiar with the technology, right? Know what's out there and know what your options are. But another part of the things that you want to build is the resilience and ability to adapt to change, so that you're not overwhelmed by it, and you know kind of how to approach how that new technology is going to change what you do, what others do, what your staff might do. So these skills that are out there are things that are both the actual specific tech skills, but they're also the what we call the soft skills, the skills that are so incredibly necessary in a world that's changing at such a rapid pace with tech. And you can't help but bring up AI. And I heard a great quote recently that said, because I think a lot of us are sort of hearing doom and gloom, all of our jobs are going away, and computers are going to be doing everything, and robots are going to be doing everything for us. That is not the case, but I think what you want to look at is AI won't necessarily take your job, but someone using and comfortable with artificial intelligence and machine learning may, right? So it's, again, more than, it's not even just necessarily learning code. It's just learning how to adapt to that change, how to recognize where you need to incorporate these technologies into your job, what the future of the job is changing, what your organization is looking for, what the next job is looking for. And that's really what short courses and skills and building these competencies does. And we build all of our courses around practical experience. So you're working towards developing either small projects throughout the modules or completion of a sort of capstone project that you could focus in using your own company to do, right? You can think, okay, my company, I'm in a nonprofit, my company is really trying to think about how to become more efficient and effective. Well, then you might want to take our digital transformation course and look at some unit, some area within your company. And throughout the process of those 8 weeks, those modules, you're going to get walked through the process of really how to understand, how to take that knowledge, how to use your own skills and your own thought process and your own critical thinking to provide recommendations for how your company might implement those things. So learning, as I said, is about laddering, and that is you learn, you absorb, you practice, right? You practice again, you increase your learning. And that's really kind of what non-credit and competency-based skills can do for you, because they're short, they're relatively inexpensive, they're flexible. So as the learner, you can move on and just take them as you need them. And we're building our portfolio around these things. So you take an 8-week course, you want to learn a little bit more about something else, you get a 2-week course that you might be able to complement that. We are approaching this. I'm a non-traditional learner. I have been my whole life. I got my undergrad part-time and my other degrees. I'm very much focused in on all the challenges that working professionals have, in addition to wanting to go back, whether it be to get a full degree or go back and, you know, build skills through non-credit skills. And so we want to make your time used wisely, because again, I've been there. And so really thinking that these are a new approach. As I said, they're learning, they're continuous learning, they're building, and you could take one and then, you know, in a couple of months come back. You know, there'll be courses that skills we don't even know we need yet. That's the other thing about non-credit skills, is I'm not going to go into too depth with the way in which higher educational institutions have governance, but the process of bringing a full degree to fruition just takes a lot longer by the nature of its length and its complexity. And so that provides those full degrees, you know, they provide you with a really broad and in-depth knowledge, which is wonderful. It's a wonderful foundation. But if you're looking to get something that's mirroring what the industry is looking for now, that's what non-credit can really step in and do. So I know some people wonder, like, what do I do? I may have started an undergrad degree. Do I go back and complete it? Should I get, you know, maybe a short certificate, again, in digital marketing or diversity, equity, and inclusion? How will that build into a longer term recognition and how employers will see it? And Dave will talk a little bit more about that. But I think it really comes down to where you are in your learning process, where you are in your career. It is a financial decision. Obviously, we know that getting full degrees, they take longer time, and they can cost a bit more, but again, it's still a good investment. But if you're looking to sort of just build and have a degree and you want to just build upon skills that you currently have and you're not quite sure, you cannot go wrong with a non-credit, because you're still going to learn something that's going to be valuable for you. And again, a lot of time and money investment will be proportionate, but not quite the same as you know, committing to a long-term degree. But these are decisions that are unique to every person, and we're going to offer, you know, at the end of this, that if you want to talk to myself or Dave further about your own career trajectory and what you should do, we're very, very happy to work with you on that. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Dave, I think I am, who's going to talk a little bit about the difference of showcasing those your skills, how you present skills to a potential employer or your current employer versus a credential, right? And when you say, well, what's the difference? A credential, thinking about something more traditional like an MBA that people generally recognize versus a certificate in organizational change leadership, right? How do you present them and how do you position them? So I'm going to hand that back over to Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really where I spent a lot of my career has been in that idea of helping folks upskill their careers. And so I right now work at Suffolk University, thinking about career education and professional development. We head up our career center, the Center for Career Equity, Development, and Success. And a lot of the work we do is thinking students are learning these skills in the classroom, on their online courses, through certificate programs. How do we as career coaches then help those students leverage the skills, leverage that content in their career growth? And you'd be surprised, employers are much less, sometimes there's the fundamental, undergraduate degree required for a job. But at the end of the day, what they're looking for is, can you do this work? Do you have the skills required to help us where we have a skills gap at our organization, or for a new software that's coming online, or a new change that's happening in our team? So it's one thing to have gained those abilities, you take a certificate program in change management, but how do you talk about that to an employer? How do you effectively showcase the skills that you built there? And so to make sure that they understand not just that you know how to use those skills, but that you could translate them to their context as well. So the idea of learning something, telling somebody else that you really understand it, and then saying, here's how I can use this skill to help you. I understand your company. I understand where you're going. Here's my unique skill set can be applied there. And whether you gain those skills through a traditional degree or through a certificate program is typically inconsequential to an employer. They want to hear you talk about it. Having that be, if you can talk about it correctly and confidently, they know that you have that skill and you know how to apply it. So one way that you can do this, you can create a portfolio of artifacts, sort of your examples of your work. And that might include work samples themselves, testimonials from colleagues or clients that you have. Oftentimes people will create unique work specifically for that portfolio to say, I don't want to do something for my current employer and showcase it. I want to create something to show what I'm capable of, sort of as exemplar work, to say, this is what, a marketer, here's a campaign that I've done, sort of a fake campaign, but here's the type of quality I can bring to your company. If you're a content creator, like a marketing or writing, it's not easy, but maybe simple to think about what that portfolio might look like. It's samples of your work. It's testimonials. It's open rates of emails that you've had. If you're not in that content creation space, it can be a little more difficult to think about what that might look like. But if, say, you're a leader of an organization who had to expand their team, talk about the hiring process, do a blueprint of, here's how I hired a diverse team and made sure that they were cutting edge for the needs that we had in our organization. Showcase that blueprint in a way that's compelling to say, here's how I hire people and here's how I do it in the future. If you're a change manager, here's the process I went through. Here are the different steps and metrics I had along the way in a compelling way. Let me tell you about that so that you can see how I do it for you. And so again, no matter what your work is, you can create marketing for yourself. And really you're marketing yourself as a product in the best sense of the word, to say, so that people are captivated by what you're sharing, can understand it quickly, and then can see you're helping lead them to understanding the ways that they would apply your skills in their company or their context. And again, whether you gain those skills, it's almost inconsequential at that point how you learned it. You're showing how you've been able to apply it, and that's gold. That trumps everything else. Another thing that's important outside of that portfolio is how are you talking about those skills to others? So whether you're in a networking situation at a conference, an elevator pitch, we talk about that all the time. I don't know how often somebody's actually been on an elevator with somebody consequential, but you all know the idea of quickly and concisely articulating what you want to do or what you're able to do to somebody else. That's another thing that we can help practice with graduates of these certificate programs, is to say, all right, you know what you did over 8 weeks, but you don't have 8 weeks to talk about it with somebody. So how are you going to make it unique to you, make it unique to your career goals, and make it compelling for somebody to hear? And a lot of that coaching that we go through with our certificate students, with our full-time students at Suffolk, is about that unique storytelling, taking what the employer needs to hear and making sure that you can, excuse me, articulate it in a way that suits your needs and applies to their context. So whether that be, again, an interview, a mock interview, an informational interview, or maybe a video that you want to put onto your LinkedIn profile. Those are ways that you can narrate your past skills, your knowledge, and your applications of them. And then going back to the idea of marketability, as we know, the world of work is changing. If I hear that again, oh my gosh, if I had a nickel for every time. But what that means is that we know that we're going to be changing jobs more frequently. We know that we need to be more nimble in how often we're prepared to switch jobs within our company, or maybe job craft. Say to our current supervisor, this is my job. I want it to be this. I want it to be different. And here's why I think that will help you. We're marketing ourselves. We're selling people on our dreams for our career. Or maybe we're selling for clients. We want to work more independently, whether that be in tandem with a full-time job or as our full-time work. We're selling our skills and our competencies to clients. And so that means that you need to think about how are you marketing yourself. And that is so much bigger than a resume these days. One of the things that I hear in my nightmares is talk to the Career Center, they'll help you with your resume. And like, we're happy to do that. But the way you're selling yourself these days, that is one small piece of your marketing portfolio. And if that's a new way for you to think, then you need that guidance from somebody like a career coach, somebody who does that work in the higher ed to workplace space to help coach you through the conversation, the tactical steps of creating your portfolio, creating your LinkedIn profile so it really highlights your skills, not just listing them, but showcasing them in a real and visual way, of practicing the speech that you're going to give, or practicing the interview answer you're going to provide, or practicing the pitch you're going to make, so that it's compelling, unique, and successful. And that's where that career coaching really is now. It's much broader than just helping you find a job posting and making sure your resume has no typing errors. It's both more complicated in a scary way, but also more open-ended in a really exciting way for people who take that extra step and who take advantage of the coaching that we can provide. That means there's more opportunities for you to find what you're looking for, and more possibilities for you to be successful over others who are treading water, going through the motions of marketing themselves. So really that idea of yourself as a product. And I say that, and I know it can sound gross. So I'm trying to think of another way to put that. But thinking of, you are an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a gig operator. Even if you're working for a company, they're your client today. Who's your client going to be tomorrow? And are you ready for that? And that's something that we work with our students with quite a bit. And communicating that unique value, that personal branding piece, is something that I know Dee has a lot of thoughts and ideas about. I'd love for her to share some of those.
Great. Yes, everything Dave said, and I know he said he felt a little uncomfortable sort of saying, positioning and marketing yourself as a product. But the reality is there is truth to it. But that doesn't need to mean that you have to then separate yourself from the why of what you do. And this is really where I get excited, okay? Because just offering you, and Dave does too, just like, I think the whole thing with the Career Center can help you with your resume. It's as though one piece of paper can really represent who we are and what we do, right? And this is, I think, what draws folks like Dave and I into this, and one of my favorite places, which is helping people answer that age-old question, what do I want to do when I grow up, right? Which it doesn't matter how old you are. And particularly, as Dave said, in this new economy and shifting, like when I was in my 20s, if you didn't stay at a job for at least 5 years, right? If that was not, never mind, previous generations where you stayed at the same company your entire career. But at least my experience was, if your resume showed that you moved around more than like every 5 years, you would be looked at as though you were almost unreliable, so to speak. Okay. Whereas today, that's no, I mean, I'm not suggesting you start a job and leave a month later, but there is definitely the world is changing. What we do, the way we do things, the gig economy says, I mean, companies starting, things that are, again, industries that didn't exist 2-3 years ago that you find that you're good for. You want to be able to have that flexibility. And thankfully, employers see it that way. They don't again, don't start a month and leave a month later. That's never a good idea unless you're a contract worker for a month. But, that idea that you grow with your job, I know my people, I want them to grow. And when they get to a certain point, if I'm unable to provide them with that, that additional ability to grow and continue their passion, I want them to move on to somewhere where they can get that, right? That's what mentorship is. That's what coaching is. So you have this idea, what do I want to do when I grow up? And then I think back to the idea of a family member who said to me, and again, this might sound a little mercenary, but it's true, right? Because we got to pay the bills. Figure out what it is you love to do, and then figure out a way to make money doing it, right? Because we do need to pay the bills. So what do you love to do, right? And I think there is potential. The one thing I've learned in my career is there is potential to turn any passion, any skill into something valuable if you can understand both why your ability to do it and bring it to an organization is valuable and why you'd want to do that. And then how, as Dave said, how you can communicate that to where you want to go. We are living in a world and a time when it is probably never been as easy to have a public platform than it has ever been, right? Once upon a time, if you wanted to become known, an influencer, or if you wanted to share your unique knowledge with the world, you had to write a book and get published, or you had to figure out how to get to an op-ed. Now, no, you don't need that. And as Dave said, LinkedIn allows people, you can publish, like, write things, if you're interested in things, you want to share your knowledge, you want to share your unique capacity, right? Your unique position, right? Where and this is one of the things I love to do. Let's figure out, like, I'm an English major with a degree in education, who loves medieval history, who teaches international business and strategy, right? And my joy is being able to figure out how all of those unique components of who I am make me good at what I do, and how I can communicate that and brand myself that way, right? And that's what it is. You don't have to worry if your background is dancing. Let's figure out how to make what it takes to be a dancer, or an athlete, or any of these things, which is commitment, which is collaboration and teamwork, and all of these really specific skills that are really valuable. Pull them out and show the world why that makes sense. And that's all part of the personal branding. Again, create a LinkedIn page, do some LinkedIn marketing, create a Instagram account, or a YouTube channel. Now, I'm not saying these aren't a lot of work and that you have to aim for 100 million followers, but they are areas that you can really highlight what you do well to a larger audience. And then people, you can start to develop your own brand in that way. And I think, as I said before, going back, I think traditionally we hear that there are certain things that our employers expect to see, or certain things they don't want to know about. And yes, to a certain extent, but what it's about is saying, how are all these things that make me unique, right, that have developed who I am, my interests, my passion, my skills and competencies, and they make me unique. And how can I then position them in a way that others can see the value that I bring, right? But it starts with really identifying and defining those things yourself. And that's why, again, short courses are kind of a great thing, because you can try something out and you can say, yeah, that's really something that I want to build off of. And then again, that goes back to what Dave said, how you position that. They do employers really care? I think they want to know what your skills are and what value you bring. And the better you are capable of positioning yourself and showing them that, the better success you're going to have. Like he said, other than someone who's going, well, I got this degree and I did this project, it's fine, but really you want to be able to push that passion and that knowledge out there to make people see that you are a good fit for them and they're a good fit for you. Okay. So that's the stuff that, I get really excited about and I love to do with coaching is like help people figure that out. What have you done? What do you like to do? How can you build an identity and a unique, as a colleague of mine refers to it, a unique boutique employability, right? That makes you stand out. And then communicating it. And Dave, I think, mentioned that. And I mentioned things like, the platforms that you use, the content that you use, and how you brand yourself. And of course, consistent messaging and networking. Some of us don't mind it. Some of us sort of dread it. But the fact is, it is about just engaging with others and putting your real value proposition out there. And really, again, like I said, that is sort of one of the things that I incredibly enjoy working with students on. And from that, you're just thinking about, again, and this is also something keeping in mind, as I said initially, learning is laddering. It's evolving, it's changing. So as we learn more and we practice more and we build more confidence and we expose ourselves to new opportunities, that boutique employability can shift and it can change. And that's another thing that we have to become comfortable with, which is it's okay. If I mean, that's part of life and growing, and it's okay if you want to shift, if you want to change your career, if you want to change your positioning. And so, how do you do that? Well, you're thinking about personalizing yourself, personalizing your career, and the potential for advancements, which I'm going to hand back over to Dave.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. And I think that idea of really taking ownership over your career path, having that customized, unique career path that fits your values, fits your skills, fits your interests, because all of our careers are going to be longer than our parents' careers were for the most part. If we're thinking about retirement age, longevity, and the number of jobs we'll have in there as things change more frequently, we're going to have more opportunities. I think you can look at it from a scarcity mindset and say, oh gosh, we're going to be in more uncertainty, but also that opportunity of I get to do a lot of different things with my career, and I'm in opportunities for me to change and be more excited. There's something I'm more excited about. It has been a long time since you got a job with one company, worked your way up through the ranks, retired with a gold watch, and we all know that. That's not something that I'm trying to convince you all of. But it still has this large cultural impact on how we think about our jobs. When my kids were going back to school, we have this chalkboard we fill out, and one of the little prompts is, "When I grow up, I want to be a." And my daughter, who's 7, said, "Do I only have to put one thing?" And my son, who's 4, said, "How am I supposed to know?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's so true." It really impacts how we think about what are you going to be, as if you're only ever going to be one thing, or as if there's one end point to your career that's the most best top. We're all going to have high points throughout our entire life that might look very different. And there's not an end point to that journey that you're aiming towards, but a continuous process of evolving that customized career. And so, I think even for myself, I know those things, but do I think about my career as a railroad track or as this, endless set of possibilities? It takes some remembering to do that for oneself. And so, as someone who at one point thought he'd be a music teacher, that was what I went for my undergraduate degree for. And then I taught some third graders how to play trumpet. And then I said, nope, I am not going to be a music teacher. And now I'm leading a workforce change webinar. I think we all know, and we can spot examples of folks in our lives, and probably for yourself too, where you're not doing exactly what you thought you'd be doing. And that's for a number of different reasons, just circumstances and happenstance, but also careers are much more nuanced than, do you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher? I think that's a very rudimentary way Jobs are so much more nuanced, intersectional, and changing than that. And that's why you're able to customize your career. You're going into marketing. Let me tell you the 1,002 things that you can do with this career that might intersect with finance or teaching or psychology. And so that really helps us shape and change the way we're thinking about careers, not as which of these 5 do you want to be, but let's create this unique, customized path for you. And that means you need to move forward with excitement and not fear. You know, at points of change, it's natural to be afraid. But I think one of the things that we try to work with our students on and our certificate holders on is this is an opportunity to change, not a time to be afraid of change. And so that coaching piece is really critical there. Because again, it's easy to tell somebody else, you can do whatever you want. It's hard to tell yourself, I can do whatever I want. Whew, that's scary. And so that coaching and mentoring becomes critical. And so mentoring, I think we all, again, can express that it's really important. How many of us can say we have a true and trusted mentor? And even more importantly, I think going away from the idea of a mentor to a suite of mentors, people who we ask for different pieces of advice, who can triangulate that idea of us, who know us well and can help us help shed light on our blind spots, who know where we've been, where we want to go, and can sometimes tell us things that we knew deep down but couldn't tell to ourselves. And that coaching and mentoring is a big part of the change. It's hard to do in a vacuum. And so one of the things that we work with students is to, again, provide some of that coaching. And we can help you identify mentors in your field. We help you identify mentors within the Suffolk alumni community, within the professional community, but then specifically that coaching to say, let's sit down and create an action plan together. You lead, and I'm going to give you some feedback and help you structure that conversation. And as a pair, it's much more successful than doing it in a vacuum where you can easily go back to those places of like, oh, well, I could never do that, or I've tried that before and it didn't work. When you have a coach with you who says, well, let's try again, or let's try it a different way, it suddenly becomes much more possible and much more exciting sometimes to have that. And you can celebrate successes together, and you can bounce ideas off together. So that's what we like to provide from a career coaching standpoint. Again, I'll say it one more time. Sure, maybe we'll look at your resume and then we'll put it to one side. And then we're going to have these great fun conversations about your unique customized career path. And we won't be done. We won't be done at that point. You will never be done. There's one day when all of us will be done, and hopefully that doesn't come soon. But till then, you're going to need continuous learning. So we can prepare you for tomorrow, maybe the day after. Then after that, it becomes the crystal ball gets foggy for everybody. So that's why that ability to continuously learn is such a critical part of curating your career. Being in charge of your career, not letting it happen to you, means that you're seeking out new knowledge and new learning. So we recommend taking time every year to set goals for yourself, step back, get out of the fray. You know, even Bill Gates has those think weeks where he says, I want to turn everything off. I really want to assess where I am, what's happening in the world, and what do I need to do about it. Everybody needs that time. And then when you have done that, then engaging in that learning. And so I would recommend many of the wonderful certificate options at Suffolk, but it could look like lots of things where you're going to upskill and then deploy those skills in all the ways that Dee and I have been talking about today. And what we help students do is to say, you might say, I have this goal. I've recognized a need that I have. I know I need to learn more about X industry, X profession, X software, but I don't know where to go next. And that's where we can be an expert. And we could say, hey, we work in education. Let us help point you to the place where you can get that knowledge quickly, inexpensively, or for the right price, and effectively. And that's another sort of partnership of saying, let us help guide you to the resources you need for your continuous learning. You bring the passion and we can bring the content. And that's really where I get excited. I think Dee and I were both sort of jazzed about this entire topic because that idea of lifelong learning has never been more important than it is today. It'll only be more important tomorrow. And so I'm glad you're all thinking about it now. And so I'm so proud and happy and excited to have Dee heading up the Center for Continuing Professional Education at Suffolk because she really knows the value of lifelong learning. She makes sure we have a great product at Suffolk University. I'm going to hand it back to her to sort of close us out and field any questions that we have from you all today.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Dave. So I really hope that if even listening and hearing this helped you think a little bit. Big fan of everything that Dave said with terms of learning and really thinking about what you want and then reflecting on experiences that you've had that were good, reflecting on experiences that you had, maybe not that good, because we don't learn unless we reflect and challenge on the things that, on the challenges that we have. I think it's also kind of one of the neat things about non-credit, which is there are no grades. And as an instructor, a professor in traditional graded programs, I often see how much importance individuals put on what grade they get. And believe me, I get it. Our society has been one that has, it is performance driven, right? It is, did you get A's? Did you get a 4.0? That decides what school you go to. That might decide what job you can get. That might decide whether you get reimbursed. Some of those things, which it really drives me crazy, because there are people who may get an A because they're really good at memorizing things. And then there are some people who may get a B, but they learned, they built the competencies. And that's what I love about non-credit, is you are just focused in on building the competencies, testing yourself, and you don't have to worry about whether you get an A or a B or any of that, because it sort of takes that expectation out, or even that challenge out of what you need to know, because we just want you to feel like you learned something, right? You learned something and you can apply it and you're comfortable with it.
So Dee, we actually have a question that just came in. So one of
yeah.
the questions is that, the fast pace of change, how fast are these certificates? Which I think is a cute way of putting that. And so I know, is it a year-long certificate? That feels very long to me. So can you talk more about like the length of time you're talking about?
Yep. So that's exactly what I was going to. So our certificates are a variety of lengths, but primarily they're 8 weeks. Our current, we're building all over time, right? We're building new certificates. It often depends on what the content is, but they're modular. So essentially, and they're primarily asynchronous with some live engagement opportunities for you to connect with a facilitator and connect with other individuals. But really, the teachers serve as facilitators. We give you the content that we think is important that you engage with. We provide you with the structure to really process what you're learning. We provide you with applied assessments so that you can test your understanding. And again, 8 weeks, these are not year-long. These are not, and they vary. Some of them maybe you want to learn. And again, we're continually building our selection, our portfolio. But you have an 8-week course in diversity, equity, and inclusion, or legal innovation and technology. But then you might want to go a little bit deeper and say, well, I work in this environment, but I want to learn a little bit more about change management. And here's a 4-week class that's going to just focus in on the concepts of change management that will then complement what you've learned in design thinking, or digital transformation, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, much more focused. So are they fast? Yes. I mean, they're timely and bite-sized. Do we have you reading an entire 300-page book or 500-page book in a week? No, that's not the point. We'd rather you go much deeper than broader.
That's great. Another question in here around the coaching. So yeah, I think we have a great team here at Suffolk. It's one of the investments the university has made is in a really large career center, and in putting career readiness is at the center of the university's entire academic mission. And so since 2020 and for our 2025 strategic plan, Dee and I are new since then because of that focus at the university. And so really excited to have those resources and the people who are dedicated to that. I will say, reach out to us. Both Dee and I serve as those coaches along with other folks on the team. And so if you've been interested or inspired by either of us or neither of us, there are other folks too. But I think that's something we're really both passionate about, and we're engaged in that. There are other folks too, and so it really is, finding the right person to help you through that path, and then that person gets to know more about you, your goals, and when we say customized and personalized, I think sometimes we hear that and you think it's going to be Dear Tom, and you get the same email. It really is a conversation and a one-on-one relationship that we build with students to help with that coaching.
Any other questions?
I'll just shout out what Allison put in the chat here that our next start date for certificates is November 13th, and you can register for those at any time. That's when the content goes live. And so they are, again, couldn't talk more about how great they are for, lifelong learning, preparing yourself to change in your career, to grow in your career, to change your current job. It's not always leaving your company, it's making your job the right job for you. And that can look so different for each person. But having this knowledge gives you that tool and that power to do that.
I think we might have another question or two, Dave, so if you want to just hang on here for a second.
Sure. Got it. So yeah, no, good question. So we think of Suffolk, the question was, do we utilize sort of Suffolk alumni as part of our career program? We think of Suffolk alumni traditionally as our undergraduate and graduate student alumni. We also have a growing base of certificate alumni who are also sort of part of that network of folks who we in the Career Center and in CCPE leverage on to say, hey, we know someone who's interested in your career path. Can we put you in touch? And what's great about that is that commonality. It's more than just reaching out to a cold stranger. It's saying, hey, we both are Suffolk alums and we share this passion for career growth. Can I talk to you about what you do? And so alumni are a big part of our career coaching process. I think you can career plan in a vacuum, but then at some point you have to talk to somebody in that role. You need to build that network out. And that's another big part of what we can do is to say, we've met with X thousands of students in these programs. Let us put you in touch with some folks who might be able to round out your knowledge, round out your sort of social capital in that industry, tell you about a day in the life of that career. Or, those are people we sometimes talk to help us forecast what's coming next. They're on the ground. And so that can be a real great way for us to know, hey, as a university, we need to invest in this type of certificate program. So we utilize that alumni knowledge and industry knowledge quite often, whether it be for broad scale things or for individual one-on-one pair ups. And we're always very happy to do that because the more connections, connect, the better. Excellent. Well, we have put our Allison, thank you, has put our emails into the chat. Welcome these conversations. They obviously give Dee and I a lot of energy. But there are lots of ways that we can interact with folks outside of this meeting.